What's up, everyone? This is the Tesla Beat 101, and what a heck of a week. Yesterday, I had my popcorn out, and I was just watching the stock unfold, along with the crazy stories, as there was a bunch of back and forth between Elon and Trump. So we're going to get into that. We even have a special guest, Matthew DR, to unpack that. But I just want to give a shout out to Insta360 for sponsoring this episode of The Beat. I'm using my link to see. We have a link down in the description if you want to check out some of their latest products. They released the X5. Wow, look, it's even moving as we're talking. But yeah, either way, great 4K. It's super mobile, especially even Brian, you're headed out. It's a great camera just to use outside of your laptop. But shout out to Insta360. We have the link. Go give a look at some of their products. I'm going to pass it to Brian for some information about an upcoming event that's happening.
So it's coming up in Michigan, June 20th and 21st. It is the summer meetup. If you're in the Midwest, anywhere near the Midwest, if you're on the East Coast of Canada or the East Coast of the U.S., this is one not to be missed. Sandy Monroe will be there. Sue Monroe will be there. Jordan Giesecke, John and Kelvin will both be there from the Silicon Valley Club, who you may be familiar with. We've got a fantastic lineup. Dr. Know-It-All, too many names to mention. TeslaMichigan.org, and it's going to be a whole heap of fun, not to be missed. Come on out and join us, won't you?
I know I will.
I know. All right, I know you will. You better.
All right. I want to bring a good friend of mine who actually I've randomly run into the airport at, along with the guy that's been most known for a bunch of things, but in the past, the Cybertruck expert himself, Matthew DR. How's it going?
Yeah. Hey, gents. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We're excited to have you, and excited to kind of get some of your input and takes on, of course, the little fight that we had going on this week. So, of course, the Tesla stock, I think, tanked to down 14% yesterday. It's rebounded another 5% after their who knew meetings could shift stocks? But the stock shot up 5% after there's supposedly a call happening today for Trump and Elon to discuss further about some of their issues that they may have, which leads us into, let's get into it. I mean, who does anyone want to kind of give an overall summary of like what happened yesterday, and then we can kind of provide our take. Otherwise, I can.
Well, I was offline most of yesterday, driving for most of the day. I went out to a site to do. I don't know what you guys are even talking about.
Joe, do you want to give it?
Yeah. So this McDonald's employee and this African American are just going at it, and the whole thing becomes like this world star video, and everybody's watching, and it was a cluster. Fun, but a cluster nonetheless.
Oh my
True
goodness.
story. True story, Brian. I swear.
All right.
Best
well, I
recap
guess. No, go ahead, Hans.
No, I don't have anything that can top that. I mean, that was literally accurate.
So yesterday, as you know, so we had, I think, it's been very clear that, Elon has kind of tried to kind of keep, I think, some of his thoughts quiet. You saw it with the CBS Sunday Morning. He didn't want to initially talk about it. He kind of mentioned something. I think Trump even kind of responded, but either way, he was trying to, I think, stay pretty kosher about it and stay in his lane on that. And then I think, this past weekend, as you may know, Steve Davis, who runs the Boring Company, was outed from Doge. And then Jared Isaacman, who was going to be the head of NASA, he had actually already had his hearings. He was going to get, but either way, they removed his candidacy from the White House. And so I think that was potentially the last straw. But either way, yesterday there was this, pretty much Elon. He's been very frustrated about this new big beautiful bill that is going to increase the deficit by, I believe, $5 trillion, and he feels that all of his work is literally being thrown out because of how much he exposed himself, his companies, with all of the work at Doge. So he feels like this is completely undoing that. And so Elon has made even comments like, oh, Trump should be impeached, JD Vance should be in, and just pretty much calling out that kill the bill has been the slogan. Call your senator. Let's undo this thing. This doesn't make any sense. And I think at one point he was even thinking, I think Trump was throwing more shade at the fact that this is like an EV mandate issue, that Tesla is losing their incentives. So this is making Elon mad, even though Elon knew about this all the time. And then I think, Trump made several statements, which if I was Elon, I'd be very frustrated too, that, that he's going to cut all of the subsidies that the government is giving Elon specifically. And so Elon responded pretty much, he's like, whatever, I don't like, make sure you also cut gas and oil as well, like just make it even across the board. But he also said, he commented on Dragon. Well, he's like, well, we can just decommission the whole Dragon space flight, which is the only reason why the U.S. is even in the space conversation right now. But yeah, there was a lot of, and then he backed off from that several hours later. If there's anything I'm missing, but either way, that just led to pretty much the public fallout of Donald Trump and Elon, who is
right. So John's frozen. So that leads us to the point to where we are in the conversation with MDR being here, and Matthew, let's go ahead and start with you and get your take on things and how you viewed yesterday. And I know you're big on stock movements and investing, so I'm just curious how investors really look at this.
Yeah. Glad to chat about it. John and I had connected about how this affects the Tesla stock price. So I like to look at the short term and the long term. Most of Elon's Elon's posts that might not be received too well by the general public, usually they only have a short-term impact, and this is a little bit more serious. So is this going to have a long-term impact? So I look at Tesla's business. What are the big movers that are coming up during this year? First, of course, is Robo taxi, which we expect in the next week or two to come out. In the second half of the year, we expect to see production of the Cybercab begin or start to ramp up, and then we're also expecting the lower cost vehicle. So how does this potential SPAD affect those? Well, the biggest one is regulatory. So one of the things that we were not necessarily expecting to pass, but expecting to be seen favorably, is a change to the regulations of autonomous vehicles and how many vehicles you could build that may not have, say, a steering wheel and pedals and mirrors and things like that. And so we were hoping that bill would come to the table potentially before the July 4th break, and would likely pass. So I think there's probably zero chance that bill happens, which is not ideal in the long term. In the short term, Tesla can still build, I believe it's up to like 2,500 Cybercabs, and are they going to build more than that over the next several months? Probably not. We're also expecting, the Department of Transportation to pass some sort of rule about a federal rule about autonomous ride hailing. Right now it's controlled by individual states and cities. We think Texas and California are going to be accepting, of Tesla launching the Robo taxi business. We're not sure about other states. If there was a federal rule, then this could roll out much faster. So it's certainly going to have a short-term effect. We can see with the bounce back today, I'm looking at it now, Tesla's up 6.5% today. So it's rebounded faster and stronger than I had expected last night, which seems to tell me, well, maybe this isn't going to be, such a drag on the stock. It looks like Elon's calmed down. He hasn't posted anything negative today. So, maybe he's talked to some people and they've asked him to really, let's try and mend some fences here. When I was reading the tweets kind of in real time yesterday, and I was like, oh shit, he's going scorched earth. And that's not ideal. It's not ideal for him to upset people on either side of the spectrum, the political spectrum. And it's definitely not good to alienate and both sides at the same time. So we'll see in the short term. That's kind of what I expect to happen in the long term. We've got 3.5 years of Donald Trump. After that, there's going to be a new president. It might be JD Vance. There's going to be a lot of senators and Congress people, running for re-election. A lot of those people are going to want Elon Musk's support. So I don't think we're going to see too many Republicans attack Elon. You can see JD has not said a single negative thing about Elon, which is that's the prudent move from him. He's taking the the high road and saying, "Hey guys, let's all be friends. Let's be a peaceful family." So maybe he's thinking about is he going to run for president? If he is, he certainly doesn't want to upset who is likely going to be one of his biggest donors.
So sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, the left gets upset. The right is now getting upset. It is the entire spectrum, and that makes sense. He has the right to insult them. He's on that spectrum himself. He said so. No, the thing I saw yesterday was a lot of the usual doubters saying, look, here comes 150. You have to have no understanding of how the stock market works to think the next move from 300 plus is 150, because there are levels of support. There are people who, if it got down to 250, would sell everything they have in their portfolio to buy it. If it got down to 200, they'd start mortgaging their house. And at 150, they'd start selling organs. This is just how the market works. There's all those. Joe's got a juicy kidney. He's been really trying to offload it. And it does seem like today is quieter already. Somebody must have sent Elon a link to BetterHelp. Maybe he clicked on it. I don't know. But the idea that it's going to halve in a day or even a week is not supported historically. You can have big dips. We did after the original all-time high a couple of years ago, get back down to like 110. And some people did very good on that move. And of course, then you've got the people saying, boy, I bet you wished you sold when it was, 300-400. No, because if I was the guy who would have taken that gain, I would have sold when it hit 26, when I doubled my money. That's not why I'm here. If I can see a better investment avenue for my dollars, for my retirement fund, I will take it. Show it to me. Show me somebody who's got a convincing pilot program in autonomy, even in automotive, in robots, in energy. This is a one-stop shop for all your future plays.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and second that. I think everything Brian's saying is right on par. Not only that, but you have to look at it first of all, I don't even know why emotions get so tied up into the stock market. The fundamentals of like MDR was saying, like the fundamentals aren't changing. Like there's so many tailwinds for this company and what's happening. Like the ravings of a employee who hasn't been paid in 7 years on X isn't gonna shouldn't really affect the stock that much. So it's just like it's really wild that the analysts look at what he posts and then they're like, oh, and it's like what? That's how you do it? That's not how that works.
I expect my volunteer CEOs to work at least 40 hours in person, Joe. That's just, I guess, something people say. But as Alexandra Mertz pointed out, that petition only represents 0.25% of the total shares outstanding. This is not a loud chorus. This is some people outside chanting.
How many shares, before Hans goes, how many shares did the guy have that stopped Elon from
9?
getting paid?
9 shares.
Yeah,
It's weird. It's the people with the smallest amount of stocks, yet they have the loudest voice. It just doesn't make sense. But go ahead, Hans.
Yeah. Clown shows. The only thing that I was going to add to the points that Brian was making is that if you look at like a volume chart of Tesla stock trading, all the highest volume was around S&P inclusion. And ever since then, we just haven't been able to move. Like it's such a large percentage of the stock that changed hands during those times. And now those shares are locked up in index funds and they're not being sold. Like they get trimmed here and there, but like that is a core stable base of shares that don't move that is huge. And it just makes it a lot harder to have, like, obviously Tesla's still a volatile stock, but yeah, you can't go half on a stock where such a large portion of it is held in these index funds. So yeah, those are the only like minor thing to add there. As far as all the drama goes, like, this is definitely something that you got two people with very big egos, and a lot of people have said this was very, very inevitable. I was so hopeful that it wouldn't come to this, but it always was one of those risks that was sitting out there in the back of my mind, like, well, we'll see how that goes. And yeah, it went. So just another day in the stock market. Things go up, things go down, things go back up again. And if you can't take the heat, you gotta get out of the kitchen.
The bloodbath incoming. I was saying before the show, I was told there was a blood. Oh boy, wait until tomorrow. To which I told everybody, if you really believe that, if that's really your conviction, put your money where your mouth is, because no one's ever lost money shorting Tesla. And I'm unfamiliar with these green bloodbaths, but they're very interesting. Is it like orcs or something? I don't know what kind of blood this is.
I will say I was, as this was happening real time before the market closed yesterday, I was expecting a red day today. So I didn't buy any call options yesterday. And I said to my subscribers on X that, in the next couple of days, we're going to start to bottom out. We're going to see a couple flat days or green day. And that's the day I'm going to jump in on some, deep out of the money calls. But rebounding so fast, I hold off on that. But there are more longer term negative things about this. We look at Tesla's business. The energy business has been growing rapidly. In the big beautiful bill, there's major cuts to the energy credit. So I don't think Tesla or Elon's going to get the benefit of being able to push to reduce those cuts or not enact those cuts. So I do think this will have a negative impact on energy for potentially the rest of Trump's term. It's definitely going to have a very negative impact on credits. We were expecting the negative impact on auto credits. I mean, I don't think anyone who voted for Trump thought that the $7,500 consumer tax credit would go away, or would stay. We all thought that would disappear, but I think some of us were optimistic that the manufacturer credits would stay. So I do anticipate a reduction in credits. Without having regulatory help on things like FSD, is that going to impact FSD subscriptions? Possibly, but that's not a very big revenue line right now either. But long term, most of us are probably planning on holding Tesla stock for 5 or 10 years, and in that time, we're going to see robotics happen. Humanoid robots, and this will have absolutely no impact on that. So, long term, this will have essentially no impact on the business, but definitely this year and possibly for the next 3 years, it could have a decent impact on margins, autonomy, robotaxi, and credits.
Yeah, I think it's still TBD on how this will impact. Is we're still, I think a lot of stuff is coming out, but one thing, as Brian always says, volunteer CEO. So I think it was the Wall Street Journal in their article, Elon Musk was the lowest paid chief executive of an S&P 500 company last year. They paid him $0. And as we all know, there's a legal battle that's happening over the Monster Stock Award from 2018, which again was seen as crazy and would never happen. And Elon responded specifically to Sawyer's tweet about this that said, or post, $0 of compensation for 7 years, despite increasing the value of the company greater than 2,000%. So, as far as I'm concerned, he pay the man what he was signing up for, literally for no compensation unless he hit certain milestones, and nobody thought he was going to hit it in that amount of time. And now everyone's trying to recant it. And I think, as we were saying before, a person with 9 shares, some lawyers got together with him and have literally tried to remove this compensation package by using literally just a guy with 9 shares. And the shareholders, as you may know, last year, what ended up happening is they actually, like, the shareholders came together in a big way and voted that we want Elon to get paid. So we'll see how this whole appeal process goes and where things lead. But it's definitely, what Elon has done with Tesla is truly amazing. And once in a generation, I mean, you see a lot of these companies like spike up 1,000, 2,000%, but it doesn't always happen. And very often it's, so he's done such an amazing job with Tesla. And even the next 5 to 10 years are going to be crazy for what this company is going to do.
And last year, Elon was not paid $0. He was paid negative hundreds of billions of dollars. That's worse. That's a lot worse. That would break my spirit. I don't know if I'd be able to show up at all after that. But he's still fighting. So
7 days a week.
Nobody else does that.
Yeah, one thing to point about, last year when we had the favorable ruling about Elon's compensation, the stock popped. I mean, there's a lot of people and institutions that have noticed that the stock has essentially been, relatively flat the last several years, partially due to this compensation issue. And I think once Elon's compensation is sorted out, not so much retroactively, but for his next comp plan, that's when I think we'll start to take off. That's where we'll see potentially a doubling or tripling or quadrupling of the stock price over 1 or 2 years pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of overhang from this, compensation package. Hopefully I think it'll have a similar pop like as this meeting did, like probably like what, 8 to 8%, something like that. And I'm just kind of throwing out numbers. But once we get past that, hopefully that will remove some of the overhang. But I think, this month is going to be a huge month. We're all still waiting to hear about if an event's going to happen, if the launch is just already happening and no one knows about it, and it's just, they're going to launch it. However this may happen, we're all still waiting to see how that's going to go. And then, but, really, to be honest, like, as they get this rolled out in a lot of major cities in the United States, like when you actually think of what Tesla's going to do, the robot is just going to be exponential to anything that, even with, Uber and having an Uber and Turo baked into one thing. I mean, that's all going to just not even matter. But getting this Robo taxi on the road, getting the ride sharing going and all this is just going to be, I think, a huge moment, especially when people can experience it. Because I think people are doing a lot of videos, like Waymo videos, of like getting into a Waymo when they go to San Francisco or LA. And I think it's a whole experience, just being able to get into this type of thing and seeing it happen, right? All right, Joe, I'm going to pass this one to you.
The future is autonomous. Probably. We really don't. We haven't heard any updates, but like you said, I think it's probably going to be pretty cool to see like those videos of people who are excited to get into a vehicle where nobody's in the front seat, right? Like even if I Uber or whatever, somebody and they see me not touching anything, like that's cool. But just to get into a vehicle where nobody's driving and it takes off and takes you to your destination, those Waymo videos are pretty cool in the beginning, and I think that's really gonna help generate some buzz on the brand when that happens. So that's gonna be pretty cool.
Have you guys been hearing much, or what is your expectation in the next week or two about the Robotaxi launch?
Haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing since that Bloomberg article. I never put a ton of weight into dates. When Elon initially announced that the Robotaxi was coming in June, when I bought some call options based on that, but I bought them for August, expecting like a July launch. So we'll be surprised if on the 12th, a week from now, we see a launch. That would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy that they had a date. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's literally next Wednesday or whatever date. So we'll see. Oh, next Thursday. So we'll see if it happens. But otherwise,
Well,
Yeah.
if you know Tesla, that tracks. Thursday is like a day for Tesla news. So
Yeah. All right. So as we know, Tesla is a car company, and they just made their 8 millionth vehicle out of Berlin. And again, this is just I mean, we're in 2025, and this company is just moving on all cylinders, and metaphorically speaking. But they're just pumping these cars out, and so huge congrats to the team there. And really proud that they were able to get the Juniper up and running. And I've been starting to see them kind of pop up here and there on the road, and they
Yeah.
just look really amazing. And again, they still don't look like anything else on the road. They kind of look like the Prius is kind of, some of the design is here, it's subtle, but they really do stand out and look really good on the road.
you know what? It's one of the things that stands out to me is the inventory of the vehicles that Tesla makes, right? Because they go to the consumer. They don't go to like some dealership where they set on the lots, and so these numbers are like actual numbers. Whereas when you look at dealerships, like, yeah, they made that many, but they didn't sell that many. Whereas like you could see like how many days of inventory Tesla has versus everybody else, and these are real numbers, real vehicles to real customers, and that's crazy.
And real lean. I've seen stories where, at one point Tesla got down to something crazy like 16 days or 8 days, whatever it was. And then the next quarter, when they finally started getting their inventory back a little bit replenished, there were stories saying Tesla's days of inventory ballooned by 60% this quarter. Yes, but it's still too low to be healthy, you absolute clown. The narrative today is Berlin is dead, Europe is dead. Berlin has a bunch of job postings, right? They're trying to expand in Berlin. That's not what a dead factory looks like to me. Maybe I'm naive, but they're not just hiring people for fun. They've got work to do.
Brian, you fool.
Hans, were you going to say something? Okay. All right, Joe, I'll kick this one to you.
India has something cooking. This is pretty cool. India will soon start accepting applications under the EV incentive program that was unveiled in March last year, which will allow companies to import up to 8,000 electric vehicles per year at a reduced duty of 15% versus the current 70% on the imported electric car price from 35,000. Now, if they commit to investing around 500 million to build EVs in the country, the Ministry of Heavy Industries said in a statement. So that's pretty cool. Matthew, you got anything on this or?
No, I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla negotiates to, instead of building vehicles there, to building megapacks or some major part. But India isn't really set up to become an OEM hotspot. They don't have the supplier base there yet, so we're many years away from Tesla actually building a vehicle there. But it would be pretty easy for Tesla to start building megapacks there.
Yeah. And I would point out that offer from the Indian government is not a serious good faith offer. They would only be permitted, these companies that make this investment, this $500 million minimum, would only be allowed to import 8,000 vehicles a year. That's not enough to test the market, to even find out what you're doing. And 70% is a big duty. Let's be honest. So they've got to, if they want companies to come in and build factories, they need to get serious. Because if Tesla had a, let's say, Model 3 factory or a compact factory, what would those 8,000 units be? Is that just S and X coming in? I guess for S and X, that would be a good enough number. But if you're going to bring in any 3s or Ys from outside, 8,000 is a joke. And I think it's just India's protectionist policies. They've got a lot of domestic manufacturers making almost all the cars there, and they just want to protect them. And I get it, but which century are we going to be living in? And the answer is not the next one.
Let me ask you a question, because when I see this story, I look at it as India, not because Tata Motors isn't selling a lot of vehicles. So
Not a lot, but there
right.
are other domestic brands. I mean, it's mostly three-wheelers in India, really.
Right.
That's
Right.
the big, and two even. But
So when I look at the story, I was thinking that they would probably view it as something like Mexico, like they would export from there. Is that not a viable
I would
option?
hope so. But Tesla knows their roadmap, and I'm waiting to see evidence that India actually does make sense. I've been making the case for India for years, but India needs to get serious. The reason China got the factory was because they were willing to go to extraordinary lengths to make Tesla feel welcome, and it has worked. Tesla pays hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes every year because they have a successful operation. So it is, India. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, and to circle back to Matthew's point on that, in order to export from India, they would have to have a supply base that can really support a high volume, and that supplier base ecosystem right now just doesn't exist. Like, we've seen how Tesla tries to localize their operations whenever they set up a factory. That's why there's one in Berlin to begin with. That's why there's one in Shanghai. And that place just doesn't really exist at the quality and scale that's really necessary in India right now. So that's one of the challenges, on top of the fact that the policy standpoint that the Indian government is coming from is also not as favorable.
Yeah, I mean, with 8,000 vehicles, Tesla's not. I mean, they may send 8,000 there, but it's not a volume driver for them, especially if they're going to be focused on volume. And more importantly, when they start focusing on the robo taxi, again, they'll still need other vehicles. We know potentially there's supposed to be a couple other vehicles launched this year. They'll obviously bring those into the fold, but 8,000 isn't going to move the noodle. And in my opinion, knowing Tesla, I mean, as Tesla is, they cut the fat, or they trim unnecessary things. Like they got rid of the right hand steering for the S and X because of the volume. So if India is not going to be serious about this, they might just end, because I know they're trying to look up showrooms. I mean, there's been a bunch of hiring GM, the sales GM, all that other stuff that's been set up there. So they may just import the 8,000 and call it a day, but they're not gonna. I think Matt made the perfect point. Megapack might make more sense than anything else, but they're really not going to be serious about this until either they get better incentives or we go from there. Oh, Matt, you want to say something?
I was going to also say, I believe India has a free trade agreement with Korea. So there were rumors, last year that Tesla might build a plant in Korea to export vehicles to India. And I would imagine that would be more likely than manufacturing vehicles in India in the, over the next, say, 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, we see it in India, but definitely not, the next several years.
Agreed. All right. Tesla Model Y range is merely a suggested range. Tesla Europe and Middle East account put out Model Y exceeds the rated range by 11%, totaling 653 kilometers, which is equivalent to, I believe it's 406 miles for us Americans, in the world's biggest EV range test in Norway. Also, the Model 3 delivered 729 kilometers of range, proving the bang for the buck at just above 400,000 knock. But I know, Matt, you've spent some time in your Model Y as well. I don't know if you want to speak to the range, but I do know that, and I think, Brian, you were mentioning it a little bit too. I think Europe sales are down, but there's a lot of countries that are recovering, and you're seeing it happen quickly, like the UK and Norway and some of these other countries. But I don't know if you want to get into that, but I think we have a couple slides down there as well. But Matt, do you want to give any feedback on the range?
Yeah, I mean, the range is incredible. I recently drove from Seattle to Spokane, which is about 280 miles in the Juniper Model Y, and so I was going to stop once regardless, but I expected, I was driving 70 miles an hour the whole way up and over a mountain pass, pretty serious driving that usually eats up a lot of battery. And I was expecting to stop halfway and have, maybe a quarter or a third of the battery remaining. And I essentially had over 50% of the battery remaining, which, if you compare that to my 2022 Model Y, would not have been the case. So I don't know how they've done it. The car is more efficient, it's more aerodynamic, as well as all the build quality improvements, but the range was surprising to the upside.
I recently did an overnight test drive of the rear-wheel drive Model 3, and I convinced them to charge it up to 100% before I picked it up. And my goal was to see how long I would need to go without charging. I drove an hour south into Oregon. I drove 2 hours home. I drove around town a bit, and the next day I drove back an hour to drop it off. Total of 4.5 hours of driving. And not only did I not charge it, I returned it with 37% remaining. I'm sorry, it's an overnight test drive. I can't get through the battery unless I don't sleep. Tesla's gotten real with their range estimates. I can't speak to Cybertruck. I don't have the kind of experience some of the panelists do with that, but with Reason Wise, it's there. It is everything it needs to be for almost all users.
Yeah, I'll jump in on I have a Highland 3 rear wheel drive as well. And yeah, that essentially has more usable range than our 2022 Model Y long range, because, you charge it to 100%, and that's, what is that? I don't know, 280 plus miles. And, if we drive to Portland, which is 180 miles, you can get to Portland and over halfway back in that car. And doing that in the Model Y, which is only 2 years older, you can, about do the same. So, just in just a 2-3 year span, Tesla has had massive improvements on efficiency.
Well, and the new rear-wheel drive Model 3 no longer uses the LFPs, so it's got the EPA rated is 363 miles of range, making it an insane value for the amount of range you get.
Yeah, I don't have the long range rear-wheel drive. I got mine in September last year before it came out. One other thing,
but you were saying you can charge to 100 because it's LFP, which gives you more daily use.
Yeah, and then one thing I'll also point out about the quality of the vehicles. Every year Tesla vehicles the build quality improves, and even from the 2024 Highland Model 3 to the 2025 Juniper Model Y, I've seen a significant improvement. I mean, the Model Y is just such a more refined car. There's less plastic. I have an issue. I've got 3 car seats in the back of the car. My 2-year-old and 5-year-old climb in themselves, and the plastic kind of cladding below the seats in the middle row, they have broken that off on both sides of my 22 Model Y because they're stepping on it, putting a lot of pressure. In the Juniper Model Y, it's carpet and it's much firmer, and there's no way for them to break it off. So it's the little things like that you certainly notice.
No, yeah, that's pretty cool. I have a Cybertruck 2024, not a big deal, but I will tell you that that the range is pretty good. I've driven that thing pretty much everywhere, and I think only Bearded Tesla and Tesla Tino are beating me in miles. I'm almost at 62,000 for the 13-14 months. So I'll tell you, man, if you're at anywhere under 75 miles an hour, you are going to get incredible efficiency out of the Cybertruck. It's insane. So yeah, I just think they've just gotten really, really well on these range estimates and things like that. So that's pretty awesome.
Drake in Ocala might have you beat on miles, but if not, it's close. He's up there.
I got to text Drake. Drizzy.
I wouldn't be surprised, Joe, if you pass people, just because I think you're consistently doing more miles. They were doing these insane long trips, but we'll have to see. But with that, I'll pass this one to you, Joe, because Tesla sales are bad, right?
Yeah, they're horrible. What you'll notice here is that sales are only up 213% year over year in Norway, just really, really bad. And also in Malaysia, You know, I mean, they're just crushing it on the sales numbers, and Australia bounces back. I mean, these are just disastrous times for the sales of.
And people love to cherry pick. Sales are down among people named Kevin and Todd, but up among people named Steve and Jake. It's so weird, but I'm just going to stick with the first half of the story because that's what drives the clicks.
Yeah, it's really well, especially some of the TikTok stories. I remember, especially during the whole Tesla takedown, there was this one video that just gets in my head. It was like there was one guy who was just gloating over the fact that it's like, I think it was like, what was it, April 1st, and in Australia the sales were down by, you know, some high double digit number, even though they had stopped the production for the Model Y ramp. And it's like, you know, it's just so much short-term thinking. But again, you got to click into the bait, you know, or you got to just put the title there, read into it. So, because I think there's one thing that's happening now too. People are saying that Elon is mad about what Trump is doing with this bill, and saying that it's because he's removing the EV mandates. And at least as long as I've known Elon for the past 8 or 9 months, and even when I interviewed him back in 2022 in May, he literally was saying Tesla will actually have a competitive advantage if you remove them, and he has been all for remove it. We're fine, right? Because people are ultimately going to buy the best product. Sure, it's helping move it, but it's also giving the competitors, you know, an advantage as well, because you're giving like what, a 20% discount, or 10, 15, 20% discount, depending on what model you're buying. But it's definitely not about the EV mandate, right? It's bigger than that, because that's just one aspect, if anything. But for him, it's just the amount of time and that he's put into Doge, and he feels like this is a slap in the face, on top of Jared being removed from the candidacy as well.
Yeah, the Jared thing was like really.
I think that's what nailed the coffin, to be honest. You know, but yeah.
That hurt.
It did. And for those who don't know, we had Jared come to our event last year, and he's probably got one of the dopest stories of, you know, he back then he was a tech exec by day, and then by night he's, you know, flying just these fighter jets. And he was actually the guy who was doing the flyovers during some of the Starship launches, which you would think typically are, you know, the Navy or sorry, the Air Force would do out of respect for what the SpaceX is doing, but he was doing it with a couple of his jets. But again, amazing story, one of the most humble people, and he truly cares about us getting to Mars. I mean, he said it in his address during that, and I thought that was the coolest thing, because it was like 2 flags, China and US on Mars, and he's like, I only see, I forgot it, but he said I only see the US putting the flag in Mars. I don't see China doing it at all, right? That's literally what the side that he chose. And so I was really bummed when that happened. All right. So congratulations, Tesla Nevada, on building our 1 millionth Powerwall, powering American homes, boosting energy independence, and strengthening U.S. manufacturing. Again, the Nevada factory, the GF1, Gigafactory 1, it's truly incredible what they're doing, because they're building Powerwalls, powertrains, and all of the batteries that are going on to at least the U.S. Teslas, and they're moving all of them down to Fremont and obviously shipping them out. But it really is incredible to see what this Tesla team continues to do. And again, this is, you know, the energy business as we know. It's been, you know, slowly ramping and growing a lot, but also too, it's been one of their most profitable businesses.
Good fat margin. I've heard people, of course, saying that what a failure it is. The wait times are long. The customers are very annoyed with that. Guys, $1 million. It's $1 million. That's a lot. And Tesla's lost their battery edge. No, Tesla's the only company that has a battery edge in the US. They're the only company making really their own cells at volume. It is in partnership with Panasonic. How do people forget about a factory that's 5.5 million square feet? For reference, that's the size of about 10 normal suburban malls. 10. So, guys, it's big margin, good stuff. And Tesla is now commissioning their own LFP production in-house in Nevada that will drastically improve the margins, reduce the costs, or more likely both.
Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. All right, Joe, this one's to you.
I was on mute. Localized supply chain equals a big deal. So I thought this is of course, I mean, we speak about it all the time, but Jeff had a really good comment here. Tesla may be the best tech example of accomplishing this at scale, both extremely difficult and valuable for cost and supply continuity. So, I mean, they set the precedent, and you can see it in everything they're doing, like what Matthew was saying, with keeping that supply chain in Berlin and in China. Like, they are really trying to make sure that everything they do is within that ecosystem, so they don't really have to worry about losing margin and things like that. And Elon even commented, it is important, albeit extremely hard work, to localize supply chains to mitigate geopolitical risk. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, my thought is that, one of the things I remember when Jeff is the guy, Jeff Lutz, one of the probably the smartest guys I know in supply chain. But that was always one of Tesla's biggest strengths. And really, as Elon has kind of become a world leader, they have all of the chips really to make moves, kind of like Apple is when they want to go into a market and things like that. They have all the chips. People want to do business. They know the impact that it will have on their economy, how it will provide people with jobs. And because for every one employee that Tesla has, they essentially create 10 more jobs through supply chain. And so at least that's some of the knowledge that Jeff has brought. So for them to be able to like pretty much build all of these factories across the world, whether it's Berlin, obviously I guess it's like, 2 or 3 in the US with Nevada, New York, and Fremont, and then Lathrop in the Megapack. But either way, they have like 4 or 5 here in the US. They also have one in China. They have, one in Europe as well. And they're going to build more, but just to be able to localize all of that stuff, it's just going to be crazy. And then shout out to Redwood Materials. Imagine once they start getting up and running, at least from wherever the Redwood Materials is, if you're reusing some of that, and again, cathode is the most expensive part of the battery. You may not even need to mine anymore. That's literally what's going to be possible once things are ramped with Redwood. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, the closed loop process on all of this is about to get pretty nutty the more and more batteries are made. It's crazy.
Exactly. All right. So shout out to our friend Zane.
Yeah.
Zangler out in Nevada. He's kind of the Joe Tagmeyer, but not of Giga Austin, but for Nevada, he's the semi guy. And so he saw because I think obviously, at least the videos that I've put out about the semi, it's been Frito-Lay. They're like, 80% of that haul is air anyways. But here you can continue to see that Tesla has a huge, literally concrete evidence that they can take up heavy payloads. And going up I believe, Joe, keep me honest here, is it the Donner Pass?
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it's Donner Pass. Just look that up. It's got an insane incline, and they are literally doing hundreds of drives between Sparks, Nevada, and Fremont every day. So this is they're getting some. I think what do they have, like 8 million plus cumulative miles on their Tesla fleet now? Something insane like that.
Yeah,
So
they
they're
are giving crazy numbers. It was nuts, man.
yeah,
Everything that they're
exactly.
doing. Plus, when we were there, all the trucks that we saw, it's like all over. It's wild.
Yeah.
And worth noting that while some of those trucks are hauling potato chips still need to be hauled. You can't stop doing it just because you don't like the truck. And this is not Frito-Lay. This is Frito-Lay / Pepsi. I don't know if you know, but liquids are kind of heavy. So they work for that purpose too. And people, of course, are just going to be cynical until things become undeniable. Even with Model Ys being absolutely everywhere, the best selling car in the world 2 years running, at least so far, people will still pretend, it's the end, man. Then it can't sell anymore. Everyone who wanted one's got one. And what are you going to do? Replace it? Yeah, some people, I mean, maybe this is your first day on earth, but yeah, people replace their cars. Matthew doesn't know what to do. He's not familiar with someone dropping so many microphones.
I was on mute. I was like, but Joe, this one's to you, man.
0% on the Cybertruck. Nobody wants that. So this is actually really cool. And you have to get the FSD, which still 0%, man. It's freaking nuts. Tesla has introduced 0% APR in a new Cybertruck orders. If you buy FSD, this means it is now cheaper in all versions of the truck to add FSD and do 0% APR than to get the Cybertruck at a 5.4 or whatever rates they have right now and not get FSD. It's just crazy to think about. So that happened.
Yeah, for me personally, like, do you guys know if you buy FSD right now with the truck, you don't get the tax credit, right? I believe that's the situation.
It doesn't affect the tax credit.
Oh, okay. Well, either way, yeah, I didn't want to. I bought a new truck recently, and I just got the subscription. So, but this is a killer deal. So at least now you're able to, while the tax credit is still around, it's potentially a good time to make a move on 0%. That's like if you're already going to be buying a truck, the Cybertruck is really a game changer.
I will say this is also beneficial to resale value. You know, we saw several years ago when Tesla was often cutting the prices of the vehicles, and it was upsetting a lot of owners because now they lost a certain amount of equity, you know, right off the top of, you know, the vehicle they already purchased. This is much better because, you know, Tesla has to subsidize these rates. So instead of dropping the price, say, you know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, which is likely what it costs to, to pay a bank to give out these loans. They're just, giving it to you on your monthly payment. So, yeah, much better for resale value. We're likely to see, some changes to the prices of all of the vehicles starting next year when the tax cut goes, or the tax incentive, the $7,500 tax incentive disappears. The last time this happened to Tesla, when they passed the volume threshold that reduced the tax credit, Tesla essentially just dropped the price of the Model 3 and the Model Y by about the same amount of money. So I would imagine we'll see something similar, in January when the tax credit goes away. So the affordability of the vehicles will stay the same. And I imagine it's also pushing Tesla to release the lower cost vehicle, this year, like they've already promised.
There are three big advantages to the FSD being buying FSD and then getting the interest. Of course, the first is it's literally cheaper in terms of real dollars. You will pay more than $8,000 in interest. The second is that FSD, while it doesn't have a full retail price in residual value and resale value, it is more than zero, which is what your interest would get you. Paying interest doesn't get you anything back on your resale. And the third one is you end up starting with a higher cost basis. So if this is a commercial vehicle that you are depreciating, you will enjoy more depreciation over the life of the vehicle, reducing your tax liabilities further.
And that just is based on the functionality of FSD today. So as FSD continues to increase in functionality, that value should increase over time, as opposed to your interest, which definitely does not.
It doesn't go up. No, doesn't get better. I should say it always goes. It always goes up.
All right, Joe, you close out with this slide, man.
Holy
And we'll
cow,
get
look at
obviously
the time. All
I
right,
know.
freaking roll it. So kudos to freaking Tesla, man. They for the first time, Tesla has launched a whole page on its website dedicated to just FSD, and they revealed a couple of new pieces of info in it. Sawyer Merritt says you got 3.8 billion miles that have been driven on FSD supervised. FSD supervised is 54% safer than a human driver when it is engaged, and FSD is trained on what amounts to over 100 years of autonomous real-world driving scenarios from Tesla's fleet in over 6 million vehicles. Tesla's fleet collectively experiences a lifetime of driving scenarios in 10 minutes. So like this page is, I went to it last night, I clicked the link, and it's just like all kinds of data and cool tips and just showing people like how this works. And I think it's kudos to the person at the team who did this, because this is probably something they should have done a long time ago, and they didn't, and they could have been just updating it. But as we know with Tesla, somebody gets promoted, moves to a different department, and then it starts all over again. So, but kudos to that person who's there now, who's doing this. So kudos to that person. Yeah, John's on mute. What he's trying to say is that he is so proud of all you guys and everything that you've done coming here today, man.
He thinks of us as the Insta360 X5 of podcasts.
Exactly.
Pretty
what
much.
I was going to say.
You cannot miss an angle on Tesla with the beat. I'll just put it that way. Look at that plug. Look at that plug with the
Landed it.
camera. Oh man, put me on the spot. All right, so just a couple quick things here. Obviously, as you know, shout out to our Insta360 partner. Also, too, if you've ever, I believe it was at the Cyber Rodeo Part 2, they actually displayed a cyber, pretty much bulletproof windows. They're going to be at the X Takeover, so make sure you check them out. Really cool stuff that they're doing. TUSV on X specifically, we also just passed 1.2 million followers, so that's pretty cool. Pretty cool milestone. If you want to win a Cybertruck, go check out our latest post. It's in our highlights section. They're giving away 2 if you sign up for a Bitcoin credit card. Again, there's a bunch of caveats there. And then the last thing is, please come to the X Takeover, San Mateo, July 25th and 26th. We are going to have some amazing speakers, amazing panelists, a cool experience, whether it's a modified Tesla section or Cybertruck showcase, along with 30 plus amazing vendors in the Tesla space and really just tech space as well. So come check it out. Going to be really cool. Lots of security, I can tell you that's for sure, because I've seen the bill. We are paying for a lot of great security to make you feel safe. Even though a lot of this stuff has died down, I was totally off tangent, but I'm wondering what these protesters are going to do now that Elon's kind of like, how are they going to show up to these protests?
They'll just put different messages on the back of the sign.
But yeah, so we would love to see you at the X Takeover. I do want to give a shout out to Matthew DR. Give him a follow if you want to learn about options. He's a Tesla expert, Cybertruck guy as well, or previously, because but either way, give him a follow. So thank you, Matt, for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And then, of course, patronize Joe. Used Hans's referral code 71453 because he is not rich in credits like Brian is with 17,000 plus credits. But make sure
not anymore. He doesn't have the credits anymore.
Oh well, I don't know what you're talking about unless he wants to share.
Oh yeah.
there's a rumor that I'm helping my son get a car and that he has somehow blackmailed me into using some of my credits to help that happen.
Crazy. Man.
But please go check out their YouTube channels, specifically Hans and Brian. A lot of really good information out there. Make sure you follow Matthew DR as well. And shout out to Joe for creating the deck this week. So we will see you all next week. We'll see if there's a bigger fallout between Elon and Trump, or if things kind of subside a little bit, but we'll keep you connected and you will not miss an angle. All right. We'll see you guys all next week.